Go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to note that the House earlier today passed a series of appropriation bills that will now be sent to the President's desk that will allow us to continue to fund our agencies, and that's good news. It represents 11 of the 12 appropriation bills that we pass every year. I want to thank our Republican leader for bringing these bills to the floor. I want to thank our chair of the Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins, and the ranking member, Patty Murray, for their work to be able to get that done. This is important work. One of the reasons I came to the U.S. Senate was to be able to help bring fiscal responsibility. As governor of Nebraska, my budget grew at 2.8% per year on average across 8 years. That demonstrates the sort of fiscal responsibility you find in states like Nebraska. As part of our Nebraska Solutions Ready for America is bringing that sort of fiscal responsibility here. It was sorely lacking under the Biden administration in Washington, D.C. In 2019, the federal government, broadly speaking, spent $4.4 trillion, and we had a $900 billion deficit. Under Joe Biden's leadership, by 2024, that spending had grown to $6.8 trillion and a $1.9 trillion deficit, more than doubling the deficit, 55% increase over those 5 years, a 55% increase over 5 years in that spending.
All right, folks, buckle up, because what you're about to hear from Senator Pete Ricketts is one of those Washington moments that actually matters, even though the media will either ignore it or bury it under nonsense headlines. I just watched this clip, and let me tell you, this wasn't grandstanding. This wasn't cable news theater. This was a straight-up reality check on how broken Washington became and what it looks like when adults finally take the wheel again. This wasn't a speech. IT was a receipt. Ricketts starts by laying out something the media never wants to say out loud. 11 out of 12 appropriations bills are done, passed, moving to the president's desk. That's almost the entire federal government funded the right way through debate, amendments, votes, and accountability. That alone blows a hole straight through the Democrat talking point that Republicans can't govern. They can. They are. And they're doing it right now. And notice something else. Ricketts thanks people on both sides of the aisle who actually did the work. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's how governing is supposed to look, when you care more about the country than Twitter applause.
Also undermined our national defense, because when you pass a continuing resolution, the military cannot do long-term planning. And we are in a very dangerous world right now. We know that communist China wants to supplant us as the world leader. We see a war of aggression by Russia. We see Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism, funding groups like Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and we see North Korea continuing to launch missiles. A national defense is very important to deterring our adversaries, and yet we passed 13 continuing resolutions under the Biden administration. Now, under the Trump administration, with Republicans in charge of the Senate, we are bringing these bills to the floor. We are passing them. We are getting them done. We still have to get to Homeland Security, and I encourage my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work quickly with what they want to see in that bill so we can negotiate to get that bill done. And this is important, too, because Homeland Security is what we fund our FEMA out of, right? So there's going to be disruptions to FEMA if we don't get this done. And we just had a deadly snowstorm on the East Coast, and that will disrupt those FEMA payments if the Democrats can't come to some sort of solution on what they want so we can pass Homeland Security. Homeland Security is also how our TSA folks get paid, the people who help us make sure we can fly safely around this country. It's how our Coast Guard gets paid. So again, important for our national defense. So all these things are wrapped up in Homeland Security, which is why it's important to get that 12th and final bill done. But I do, again, want to compliment the House for passing these bills, compliment the Appropriations Committee here in the Senate, compliment our Majority Leader Thune for getting this done. We've got 11 out of 12 done. That's 96% of the funding of our discretionary agencies. Getting that done is an important step forward in getting back on the track to fiscal sanity in this nation. It is sorely needed, and Republicans are delivering on that here in the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back my time.
Money with wings and numbers that should make you mad. Then Ricketts does something dangerous in Washington. He brings facts. Under Trump, for $0.4 trillion in spending $900 billion deficit. Under Biden, $6.8 trillion in spending $1.9 trillion deficit. That's not investing in America. That's lighting your kids' future on fire. A 55% spending increase in 5 years. A deficit that more than doubled. And what did Americans get for it? Higher prices, higher interest rates, weaker borders, endless foreign chaos. Ricketts contrasts that with how he ran Nebraska, responsible growth, disciplined budgets, real-world math. You know, the kind of leadership regular Americans use every single day in their own homes. Washington Democrats? They treat your money like monopoly cash. Police scar like continuing resolutions. The real scam. Now this is where Ricketts absolutely nails it. Democrats love to pretend continuing resolutions are responsible governance. They're not. They're cowardice. Instead of putting spending bills on the Senate floor and letting senators vote, Democrat leadership buried them. They refuse debate. They refuse amendments. They refuse transparency. So what happened? 13 continuing resolutions. That means Biden-era reckless, spending locked in military, unable to plan, long-term bureaucrats fully funded. No questions asked. That's not compromise. That's surrender to the swamp. Globe showing Europe, Africa, this is not a safe world. And let's be honest, this is not the time to play games. China is openly preparing to challenge U.S. dominance. Russia is waging war in Europe. Iran is funding terrorism across the Middle East. North Korea keeps rattling missiles. And Democrats were perfectly fine running the U.S. military on short-term funding like a temp job. That's insane. National defense doesn't work on month-to-month extensions. Deterrence doesn't run on autopilot. Republicans bringing real appropriations bills back to the floor is not just fiscal sanity, it's national survival. Stop sign why DHS is the final battle. Now we get to the key issue, Homeland Security funding. Ricketts makes this crystal clear. DHS isn't some abstract line item. This is FEMA disaster relief TSA agents protecting air travel, Coast Guard defending our waters. And this comes right after deadly snowstorms on the East Coast. So when Democrats stall this bill, they're not resisting Republicans. They're risking disaster aid delays, security disruptions, real-world consequences for Americans. Ricketts isn't begging. He's saying, say what you want. Put it on the table. Let's negotiate and finish the job. That's leadership. Fire what this moment really represents. This speech tells you everything you need to know about the difference between the parties right now. Republicans. White heavy checkmark passing real budgets. White heavy checkmark restoring regular order. White heavy checkmark confronting runaway spending. White heavy checkmark taking national security seriously. Democrats. Crossmark delaying. Crossmark obstructing. Crossmark hiding behind process. Crossmark protecting the Biden spending machine. This is what fiscal sanity looks like. This is what America First governance actually sounds like. Quiet, firm, responsible, effective. The media won't hype this. They won't praise it. They don't want you paying attention when Washington actually starts working again. But moments like this matter. Because this is how you drain the swamp with slogans, but with structure, discipline, and accountability. If you want more breakdowns like this, the stuff the media won't explain, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. We're going to keep calling it straight patriot to patriot.